Hey everyone, welcome back. For those of you who are new here, my name is Brittany. I'm a health coach and nutritionist, and my channel is all about helping you to create delicious low FODMAP meals to improve your digestive health. If you're into it, go ahead and subscribe for more low FODMAP recipe tutorials, as well as my tips and tricks for helping you live a low FODMAP lifestyle. Okay, so today we are going to be making gluten-free jalapeno cornbread. I am super excited to show you guys this recipe because I made it for the first time a couple of weeks ago, and oh my god, was it delicious. I ended up eating at least half of the pan over 2 days. It was so good. It uses masa harina instead of cornmeal because typically a cornbread will use a 1-to-1 ratio of flour to cornmeal, but this time we are going to be using masa harina, which gives it a much smoother, creamier, moist texture. You guys will see. We are going to be adding a little bit of sugar into this recipe, but if you are in the elimination phase of your low FODMAP diet and you aren't eating sugar at the moment for any reason, then feel free to leave it out. It just won't be a sweet and spicy cornbread. It'll just be like a regular cornbread. The other thing I wanted to say is that if you are not sure how your body is going to handle peppers, then you can go ahead and just skip the pepper and make regular cornbread also. Okay, so let's just get started. Okay, so we are going to start with our jalapeno, and I am going to dice up half of this jalapeno, and then we're going to slice the other half to garnish the top of our bread. So let's do that. If you want to make sure your bread doesn't come out too spicy, you could go ahead and remove all of the jalapeno seeds if you want to just get more of that jalapeno flavor. But I like spice, so I'm going to leave them in. So the other thing I wanted to mention really quick about jalapeno is that there isn't technically any information for it on the Monash app. The only information they have is for pickled jalapeno, which is low FODMAP. So I know that I'm okay with jalapenos and other peppers if I cook them down, which is what we're gonna do with this jalapeno right here. Just to help, the cooking process helps to speed up the digestive process. It helps your body to digest it. So that's why we're gonna cook this before we put it in our batter. But if you are not sure, like I mentioned before, if you're not sure how your body tolerates peppers, then you can go ahead and skip it and just make like a plain cornbread. Or you can use the pickled jalapenos like the low FODMAP app says. So it's up to you. Okay, so now let's go over to the stove and saute these up. Okay, so now we're just going to saute down our jalapeno in a nonstick pan over medium-high heat with a little bit of olive oil, about a half a tablespoon. Just cook them down for about 5 minutes until they're soft and they have some crispy bits. Then we're just gonna set those to the side and let them cool while we mix up the rest of our batter. Okay, so now while our jalapenos are cooling, we're going to mix together our batter, and we're gonna start by combining our dry ingredients. So, like I mentioned, we are using masa harina today instead of cornmeal. This is corn flour, and I have some cornmeal here because I wanted to show you guys the difference. So cornmeal, it's a bit more, let's see if you can see this. It's a bit more coarse in texture, and that's what gives cornbread its characteristic feel, you know, as opposed to the corn flour, which I'll show you. It just looks like regular flour. So you can see the difference here, and you see how using the masa harina is actually going to make it a much smoother texture and much more moist. Okay, so let's start adding our dry ingredients. Okay, so I'm going to add 1.5 cups of masa harina. We're also going to add half a cup of gluten-free baking flour. You guys know I like to use Bob's Red Mill gluten-free 1-to-1 baking flour. So I'm gonna add half a cup of that. I like using this flour because it's made out of a blend of gluten-free flours to help mimic wheat flour. And it also has xanthan gum in it already, which acts as a binder. So that's something you don't really have to worry about. Okay, we're also going to be adding half a cup of sugar. We are going to be using white sugar, just regular white table sugar. And that's part of what makes this recipe low FODMAP. And that's because Regular granulated table sugar has a ratio of 1-to-1 of glucose and fructose. So when you have an even ratio of glucose to fructose, then it's easier for people with IBS to break down and absorb that fructose. Whereas if you have a lot of excess fructose, like a lot more fructose than glucose, which occurs in lots of different fruits, then the body has a hard time breaking down and absorbing it. So that's why it can be difficult to eat all the different fruits on the low FODMAP diet. Same thing with honey. Honey can have a lot of excess fructose, which is why we can only use it sparingly. I know it's crazy because it seems like, oh, regular white table sugar, like that's not healthy for you. Like they want you to use all these other like fancy sweeteners like monk fruit sweetener and all this stuff, but you don't need to do that for the low FODMAP diet. Just stick to regular table sugar. Just don't eat it a ton because obviously it's sugar. It's not great for you. But it's fine like every once in a while, just a little bit in moderation. Okay, so now we are going to add 2 tablespoons of baking powder. We're gonna add a teaspoon of salt. I am like basically out of salt, which is not good. Yeah, we do need more salt. We need to go get the ground pink Himalayan salt from Costco though. But for now, I'm going to be using the Maldon flake salt. It's fine. Okay, a teaspoon of that. Okay, so that's it for our dry ingredients. Mix those together. Just get everything all blended evenly together before we add our wet ingredients. Now I know technically you are supposed to mix all of your wet ingredients together and then mix them with your dry ingredients, but I never do that because I don't want to make another dish. Honestly, I don't. So I just put all my wet ingredients into the dry ingredients after I mix them. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna start with 2 eggs. We're also going to add a 1/4 cup of melted butter. If you wanted to keep this recipe dairy-free, you could. You could use coconut oil. What else could you use? I feel like coconut oil would probably be the best, substitute. So a 1/4 cup, which is also 4 tablespoons. So let's cut that off of here. Okay, so I'm just gonna stick this in the microwave for about 30 seconds to melt it. So let me go do that. Okay, we've got our butter melted. Let's let that cool for just a second. We're also going to add 1 tablespoon of white wine vinegar. You could also use apple cider vinegar if you prefer. Okay, we're gonna add our butter. And lastly, we're gonna add 1 cup of milk. I'm using Lactaid, whole Lactaid, because I like to have a high fat content in my milk. And the other thing I really like about Lactaid is that it is real milk. It just has the lactase enzyme added to it to help your body break it down. Okay, so now we're just gonna combine that. If you're not experienced with gluten-free baking, then I would highly recommend starting out with a cornbread like this, or like a banana bread or a pumpkin bread, some sort of pound cake, because it doesn't rely on the gluten to help give it structure as much because it is like a more dense pound cake. Okay, so now I can see that our batter does need a little bit more moisture. So I like to start off adding 1 cup of milk, but then I add a couple of tablespoons as I go until it reaches the right moisture content. Okay, so I just added 2 more tablespoons, and we're gonna give it a mix and see where it's at. You have to go slow and really be mindful of the amount of moisture that you're adding when you're baking, because the level of moisture in the air is different from day to day, and depending on which part of the country that you live in. So it might not need as much moisture or it might need more moisture. You'll have to see. Okay, this is looking pretty good. I do want to give it a little bit more moisture. Okay, that's looking really good. So that ended up being one cup 1¼ cups of milk. And I will have the final measurements on the website, okay? So now we are going to add our jalapeno. So I'm just going to set aside these slices here because we're going to use them on top. And then the rest of this we're going to add in. Now we're going to take our baking dish and we're going to grease it. I just like using this avocado spray. So yeah, you see how there's still like a little bit of flour left in here? Make sure you get the bottom. Okay, so now I'm just going to spread this out. Ooh, that batter is really good. It's a little spicy though. Perfect. Okay, so now we're just going to take these jalapenos and we're just going to throw them across the top for decoration. And yeah. Okay, so now we're just going to throw this into the oven at 375 for 30 to 35 minutes, okay? Okay, guys. There we have our gluten-free jalapeno cornbread. This has been baking in the oven at 375 for 40 minutes. I like to keep an eye on it after 30 to 35 minutes because everyone's oven is different. But you see how it's got this nice golden brown top on it? That's exactly what you want. So now we're just going to let this cool for about 10 to 15 minutes, okay? All right, guys, it's been about 15 minutes. So let's cut into our cornbread and have a taste. I just like to run my knife around the edge to make sure everything is like loosened, but it's not even really sticking. Just get this little corner piece. Oh man, look how beautiful that looks. It's still pretty hot. Oh my God, so good. Can you see the steam? Oh my God, so good. It's smooth and creamy. It's not dry and got that coarse. Oh, sorry. It has such like a moist and like smooth, like creamy texture because we use the masa harina instead of the cornmeal. And then we use milk instead of water. Gives it that like creaminess. And then it's a little bit sweet, a little bit spicy. It's perfect. Yeah, it's gonna be really hard not to eat this whole thing. All right, guys, there you have it. Low FODMAP, gluten-free jalapeno cornbread in about an hour. So I really hope you guys try this recipe. I hope you like it. And this is gonna be perfect for the coming fall weather. So I'm excited for you guys for that. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe to this channel. I noticed that only 25% of you guys are subscribed, so I would really appreciate that. And if you like this video, found it helpful, please give it a thumbs up and send it to somebody who has stomach issues and that you think would really benefit from my content. I would really appreciate that. Okay? Thanks again, you guys. Have a good one. See you next time.